is to ensure that as we look at these opposing militaries and the political and social structures that support them, we actually need to use the same or similar criteria to understand the relationship of the polities and their militaries, even if they're differently designed forces. Third, that in open societies, we talk much more freely about corruption than closed societies, and so that we have a bias to seeing flaws in open societies somewhat faster, or to talk about those more openly. I have so many more that we could put on the table. Another is that there was no rigor in the application of certainty and uncertainty to assessment, right? Certainly in public assessments, as opposed to in formal intelligence assessments within the US and allied governments, those assessments were made pithily in writing or in speaking, in podcast or in print, without caveats about the certainty or uncertainty or reliability of their information. And those things too can compound the errors of assessment.
You know, one of the problems, Kim, I think, is that in any community of any kind, academic, kind of analytic, government, you have to look at what are the incentives. I think the incentives, if you're going on CNN, are not to say, you know, it's really complicated and I have this view, I'm not entirely, you know, fully certain of it, I may very well be wrong.
You just got to draw those big arrows right across Ukraine.
That is not rewarded.
Yeah.
And that's a problem because part of what we all deal with is what's the nature of the media environment that we're in. And the media environment rewards us all for being very certain, and because people don't have particularly long memories, and there isn't anybody out there keeping book. You know, you can get away with things and be equally certain the next week.
Yeah, I think from an FFRDC think tank perspective, and the number of different war games I ran with RAND colleagues for Russia, all of them that I ran were on the Baltics. But that was the interest of our sponsors at the Department of Defense. And one of our RAND colleagues at one point, this was 2 or 3 years ago, and we were putting together a scenario for another Russia attack. And this was before February 2022. And one of our RAND colleagues said, you know, the Russians don't care about the Baltics that much. They really care about Ukraine. So if you really want to think about a possible future war, Ukraine is much more likely than it would be in the Baltics. But that is one of the things that at least my analytic community is tied to, and that is the interest of our government sponsors.
And when it comes, I mean, actually, I'm the latecomer to this community think tank. I mean, I have no experience of it, and until the last 2.5 years. And what has been interesting to me and somewhat troubling is that the incentive system worked in a way which I wasn't expecting. I'm a historian, and as part of the project, I went back and looked at 20th century assessments before lots of think tanks and research centers, and they weren't afraid to say, we don't know. There was a lot of, well, you know, it could be this, it could be that, and because they didn't say, I'm an expert and I know. It tended to be more, these are the things to think about. Whereas as we've created this larger structure of analysis, it seems to be much more certainty, therefore, given by that structure. And the really troubling thing is the analysis has gotten worse. How as we put so much effort into it,
but I think Phil, at least from our end, it ran the first couple of weeks of the war. That's why RAND leadership came to me and a couple of colleagues because we were asking that questions. We all, we war gamed Russia into the Baltics. They hit, the Baltic Sea in 48 hours, 60 hours. So we wanted to know
What happened?
why we ran these games these way, what were the assumptions that we brought into it, those kind of things. And we actually learned. And a lot of things that we learned in our report come out in this one too.
So that brings us to